welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is our monthly episode with members of the Kankakee County Museum, where we dive into something historic in our county's history. And we are joined by Jack Klasey. Welcome, Jack.
Well, it's always good to be here.
Always good to have you here.
Unfortunately, not here with my right-hand partner in these things, Jory Walters. Unfortunately, Yes. She was unable to join us today, but I'm going to fly solo and try and do the job right.
We will do the best we can, Jory. Jory's going to listen back to this maybe and be like, oh, they forgot this.
Exactly. Yeah, she is a terrific researcher and has a huge amount of information.
Yes, she is. So sorry you couldn't be here today, Jory. We miss having you here on this episode, but there'll be some in the future, I'm almost certain. Of course, before we get real thick into things, just to remind people, Kankakee County Museum has the location on 8th Avenue in Kankakee, which is right where small Memorial Park is. And then there's also the French Heritage Museum that people can visit right in the heart of downtown Kankakee.
Indiana and Oak Street.
KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. And you can also find them on Facebook and Instagram at Kankakee County Museum. You can even become a reoccurring member, and your membership, of course, helps the museum continue to preserve our county's history and also pay for things like Jack and I were just talking about before we were recording. One of the biggest expenses right now is the roof needs to be repaired on the main campus. And we need, I think it's like $150,000. It's not a cheap.
It's a lot. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And the next step is, even some of the other buildings there on the main campus, the schoolhouse, the roof on that always needs maintenance, and even the roof on the small house.
Governor's small house. And yes, when you have real estate to take care of, you have a lot of stuff to keep up.
Especially when some of that is old historic real estate.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, anything that you can do is greatly appreciated, even if it's something as simple as $5 a month. It sounds like it's little, but if enough people do that, it really goes a long way. So
the museum has a good history of fundraising for various things. The members and the community in general frequently respond very well to that.
Yes. So thank you for anyone that's given any contribution, or even if it's just your time. It's all greatly appreciated. Today, with the warmer months upon us at the time of recording anyway, we wanted to talk about the Kankakee River State Park. And we've talked a little bit about the state park in past years. It's been a little while though, and we actually haven't dedicated a whole episode to it. So I figured now was a good time to do that.
Sounds like a good time anyway.
Yeah.
Recreation is a very important part of our tourism here.
It is. As I've often said, we are here because of the Kankakee River.
That's right.
There's no other reason why we would be here. So where do we start with the Kankakee River State Park?
Okay. Officially, Kankakee River State Park came to be in 1938. But actually, the roots of the state park go all the way back to 1910. Really kind of interesting. When I was doing some research on this, I'd forgotten some of this, but I've been turned it up, that in 1910, the Illinois Light and Power Company, which was a predecessor of Commonwealth Edison, acquired 2,500 acres along the river on both sides of the river, basically from Altorf downstream from there beyond Warner Bridge.
And what was the point of that? Was it to make a power plant, or?
Yes, exactly. In fact, the plan was to build a 60-foot tall, 750-foot long dam somewhere roughly downstream from Warner Bridge. And it was going to be a power generating plant as well as a recreational type of situation. It would have changed the complexion of this county incredibly, because It would, for one thing, the dam, if it would have, or the power plant, would have provided the electrical power for Kankakee, Wilmington, Joliet, and a number of other cities.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't like, the city of Kankakee has a hydroelectric plant.
Hydro plant, right.
But that is so small in comparison.
If I remember correctly, that provides the power for the sewage treatment plant. And
yes.
That's basically it.
Yes, I know I remember asking Mayor Curtis one time because they've, in recent years, they've been going through the process of rehabbing the hydroelectric plant there. And I remember asking him, I'm like, where does that electricity go? And apparently, it gets sent to Karma or something like that, which is the sewer plant.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Also, then this is even more dramatic. The dam would have created a half-mile wide lake stretching all the way from the dam back upstream to Kankakee. So you would have had a 16-mile long, half-mile wide lake.
Oh my! And that would have been man-made, right? Obviously,
right. Essentially, same thing as some of the rivers out west, where you put the dam up, and suddenly, instead of a narrow little creek, you have a raging torrent. It would raise the water level all the way back to essentially the dam in Kankakee.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine if that would have happened and what that would have created as far as recreation or tourism or attraction?
There were various stories in the newspapers, in the Tribune and of course the Journal, or the predecessors of the Journal, talking about one of the things that would have been done was it would have created a huge opportunity for summer resorts and for people with waterfront property for their houses and this sort of thing, a lot of residential type of thing, as well as, of course, whatever things that the power generation would have created in terms of industry.
So what happened to this grandiose?
Well, it on and off. There was a lot of activity for the next 20 years, actually, until 1929. There would be stories saying, well, we're going to start building next year, and then something would come up and they wouldn't get building on there. But the company had all of the land rights and owned all the property. They finally actually broke ground and did something early in 1929. And it looked like the future was great. Unfortunately, at the end of 1929, we had the stock market crash, and the whole project died.
That's just like, well, I guess you can compare that to so many projects that never made it off the ground in the Kankakee County area. Right. I feel like there's been a handful of episodes where we've talked about something where that exact same thing happened. We were supposed to have this big grand thing. It was being constructed like right around the time of the stock market crash of 29, and then it never happened.
It never happened. It originally was estimated as a $5.5 million project. Now, in terms
that'd be in like the billions today, or something.
I was going to say, in terms of today's, I could have figured out if I'd gotten the right website, but I didn't have a chance to do that. The ownership of the plant, of the ground, though, was basically went from Illinois Light and Power to its successor, which was Northern Illinois Public Service Company of Illinois. And then it sort of faded out for a while, but there was a lot of pressure and a lot of publicity in the 20s, especially of the need for more state parks, especially in the northern third of the state, because of the large populations in Cook County and so forth. Chicago Regional Planning Association in 1927 urged the establishment of more state parks within a 50 or 60 mile radius around Chicago because of course, the large population growth.
Yeah, they wanted to have parks that weren't too far from Chicago, right?
Yeah, and just about that same time, of course, the highway network was being developed, so people could hop in their Model A Ford and drive for 50 miles to a state park was a big idea, Yeah. 1928, there was a plan published in the Tribune and I'm not sure who was behind it, but it was a speculative settlement. Here's some possibilities for state parks, and one of them would have been at the confluence of the Kankakee and Des Plaines River near Wilmington, which is of course where the river of Illinois River is formed by those two coming together.
And they do have a dam in the Wilmington area.
There's a dam
too.
in the Wilmington area, yes. Mm-hmm. And the other one was interesting. It ran from Momence to Aroma Park.
Okay.
But neither of those actually ever took off, apparently. They probably died in whatever plans might have been in 1929. Robert Kingery, who was the director of the Northern Illinois Planning Association, an interesting quote. He wrote, this is in 1928, I think, "The whole reach of the Kankakee River, with the unusual and spectacular gorge, is one of the best possible sites for a state park." He noted the population of Kankakee and Will counties was growing, as is the population of southern Cook County, and privately owned lands along the river will not remain available for very many years more. And boy, he was right.
Oh, he was very right about that. I mean, I just often think too, with the beauty of the state park, oh my gosh, I can't imagine it being a ginormous hydroelectrical plant being stuck right in there.
That's right.
It's just wild to me.
We were talking about the crash and so forth, and just reminds me of something that a lot of people are familiar with near Warner Bridge, and that's those abutments in the river, the stone piers. People always say, "What is that? Why are they out there? They look really old," and they are. 1871. They were built to carry the tracks of a railroad called the Decatur and Chicago Union Railroad across the river. Unfortunately, in October 1871, we had a huge fire in Chicago, and it wiped out the investors and the plant. The built road was never built, but the piers are still there, and everybody looks at them and scratches their head and said, "What are those doing out there?"
I guess I never knew that.
Yeah, Warner Bridge itself is kind of an interesting story, too. It was built in 1919. And if you think back to the earlier days before then, if you wanted to get across the river, if you happened to live, say, in what's now Limestone Township, and needed to get to Momence, you would have to go down, going to Bourbonnais, let's say. You would have to go quite some ways down the river, cross at Kankakee, and go out to Bourbonnais. And sometimes it would, of course, be even longer. The only bridges across the river at that time, before 1919, in Kankakee, you had Washington Avenue and the Railroad Bridge, and later, I think, Station Street by that time. But then you didn't have another bridge until you got to Wilmington.
Yeah, that was that's a long stretch.
That's a big, long stretch. And I don't remember how many miles it is, but I know that, there was quite a movement to get that bridge built because it was going to save a lot of time. And of course, again, and also another little odd fact. There are roads that parallel the river on either side. Today it's 102 through Bourbonnais and 113 south.
Correct.
But up until, and I don't remember the exact year, the one north that is now Illinois 102 was 113 also. You had 113 north and 113 south.
Oh, I did not know that.
For many years, and then eventually it became Illinois Route 102 to differentiate.
Yeah, that would be confusing after a while.
I think that was in like the 40s or 50s, but I'm not sure that they made the designation change on that.
I'm glad they did because to me that sounds confusing.
Yes.
To say, well, were you on east or were you on, which one were you on?
Finding old numbers, road numbers is kind of interesting. You find Route 45 going north.
Right, that changed too.
Yes, and so I've forgotten. One of them was Route 20. I know that, And at one time, a great deal of the traffic coming from the west on the south side of the river went through down Water Street and so forth, and across the Washington Avenue Bridge to continue on north. That's another whole subject. Subject of highways and how they've changed.
Oh yeah, that would be a great episode. All the highways that used to be different names
and how they became something else.
Yes. But so it obviously come to where we're at in the 1930s by this point, right?
I was going to say, after a number of digressions, we finally come to the actual establishment of the state park. This is in the year 1938. A Chicago woman, Mrs. Ethel Sturgis Doomer, donated a 36-acre site to the state of Illinois to form a state park. And that site was on the north bank of the river, just west of Altorf. And one of the interesting things in that original gift was an island in the river called Kaler's Island that has a distinction. It's the home of a rare and still somewhat endangered flower species called the Kankakee mallow. And this is what it looks like.
So it's called Kaler's Island? I thought...
Kahler, K-H-L-E-R.
So is that also Langham Island? Or is this...
I think Langham Island, there are a couple of different names, but...
Okay. I've never heard that name. I've always just heard Langham Island.
Yeah. But anyway, at one time, this was believed to be the only place in the whole world that the Kankakee mallow grew. In fairly recent years, I think they have found a couple of their incidents where there's small patches or stands of the Kankakee mallow, probably up and down the Kankakee somewhere. I don't remember exactly, but...
Yes, there's actually a whole episode of the podcast you can listen to with the organization Friends of Langham Island.
Oh, yes.
And they get into the history of the mallow and all of that. Yeah. The Kankakee mallow is super fascinating, and you can actually... I think you can actually get seeds or plants of the Kankakee mallow and even have in your yard.
I think so. I think I read somewhere too that's good to be able to preserve a species. That's a pretty flower.
It's a very pretty flower. But yeah, apparently it originates from that island.
Right.
So
yeah, I think it was isolated.
Right. So that what did you say? It was 36 acres?
36 acres on the north bank, basically, plus the island. And just to the west of Altorf. And it developed fairly slowly. Over the next 5 years, from 38 until 43, the park grew to be 191 acres, which is not too bad. And that was done by, quote, land swaps between the state of Illinois and Public Service Company. I guess they each found properties they wanted to fill in holes.
Yeah, they said, well, we want this property here,
right,
and we'll give you this land right by the state park.
Something is done fairly extensively with communities, I think, and businesses or communities and other orders. Oh, yeah, you take this piece and I'll take that one over there, and that way it'll work out.
Yeah.
But by 1946, a very influential figure in terms of the development of the park came into play. His name was Victor McBroom from Kankakee. He was a state senator. He was appointed state senator to fill an unexpired term in 1946.
And who was he appointed?
I'm sorry?
Or who was he filling?
I don't recall the whose term he was filling, but anyway, he was named.
He was a state senator. Yeah,
he was state senator. He was the McBroom family. For anybody who's been around Kankakee for a few years, would realize that they were very influential in political circles and in the restaurant business. The McBroom's Cafe downtown on Schuyler Avenue for many years was the place where most of the political business of the county was done.
Yep.
As well as a lot of very happy diners.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the names when you mention early days of Kankakee County. it's one of those names you can't help but bring up. Like you have to bring it up because so they were such a big deal.
Yeah. And I think that, McBroom, he became a powerful voice for the development of the state park. I mean, he was, man, really at the heart of things in the state Senate because since it was obviously a state park, there were a lot of things that had to be done from a congressional standpoint or a legislative standpoint, and he was the man who would push them through if need be. He worked for many years with the state agencies and landowners and local organizations to achieve the goal of creating a really vibrant state park. When he died in February 1959, the Kankakee Daily Journal published an editorial that extolled his life of leadership. And the editorial noted that his interest and his hopes for the Kankakee River State Park have been largely responsible for its present worth as a recreational area for thousands. Actually, I think you could cross out thousands and make that millions over the years. Because
I would say so. I mean, if we're going all the way back to 1938.
That's right.
At this point. And
jumping back and forth a little as we do frequently.
Yes, we do.
1946, the Kankakee Chamber of Commerce got involved in the whole issue, and they were strong backers of the idea of the state park, and they put their money where their mouth was. They ran a fundraising campaign and came up with $17,000 and purchased and deeded to the state 86 acres of land for the state park. The source I had doesn't say particularly where that went, but I would think it was probably somewhere between Altorf and Rock Creek.
Yes.
In that area, and of course on the river. 1948 was an interesting year. In fact, kind of a pivotal year for the park as we know it. On December 24th, 1948, I guess the state, or at least Kankakee County, got a big Christmas present. Rock Creek Canyon was purchased by the state to become part of the state park. And it was a 92-acre parcel, and they bought it for $200 an acre, which was considerably less than the electrical utility had paid for it originally back in 1910.
So did at that point, was there just no one wanted the land? So they just, do you think that's why it sold lower?
No, I think it was probably a political deal.
Okay.
as is usual. I mean, there was a lot of pressure to develop, and of course, there was especially to keep that particular piece of land, or bring that particular piece of land into the state park system, because, if it had been developed privately, who knows what it might have been,
Yes, right.
So, and most of this was farmland or forest land, basically. It was
right. It was all woods and farmland, and obviously, anyone who's been there, there's a lot of limestone.
Definitely, yeah. It's the most beautiful section of the river.
Yes.
Because you have, a placid river. It's wide, and it's got the limestone outcrops on either side, and it winds through tree-lined banks. It's just a beautiful piece of
gorgeous.
It is, and it's a good thing that became part of the park. I was talking about Rock Creek Canyon.
Yes.
Here's an example of some of the formations in Rock Creek.
I mean, it's one of the most famous spots in the whole park.
That's right.
I can't imagine State Park without the Rock Creek Canyon.
No, it would have not been the same.
No.
Coming back to somebody whose picture I forgot to put up is Victor McBroom.
Oh, okay.
This is Vic McBroom in the state Senate at one point later in life. And he was a man to be reckoned with if you got involved in anything political in Kankakee at that time, or anything to do with the state park. You had to get past Victor.
Yeah. That's what I've heard.
And we also were talking about 113 and 102.
Correct.
This is the 113 North Bridge over the Rock Creek.
Okay.
Back in probably 1950s or 30s, 40s, and somewhere in there, because It's been replaced, obviously, by a concrete bridge.
Yes. Yep. And that's also where the Pedway Bridge is too, right? That's the
swaying bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just downstream from there.
Yes.
That goes over to the site of Rockville.
Correct.
And comes out of the parking lot and the headquarters area.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about Rockville. I mean,
Rock Creek is just amazing. There's another 1948 story, in fact, that also involves Rock Creek, and that is Public Service donated 50 acres to the Northern Illinois 4-H Camp Association. And it included some frontage on the upper reaches of the Rock Creek Canyon, but that became Camp Shaughnessy.
Yes.
And that's not part of the state park, but it is adjacent to.
Correct. And it's still in existence today.
And they have Shoe Fest there every year, I believe.
Yep.
And
it's so crazy that, they do this big music festival each year right around Labor Day. Mm-hmm. I think it's always Labor Day weekend. And it's very much a bubble. I feel like most of the people that go to that festival aren't even from around here. They're literally from all other parts of the state or the Midwest or the country, and they all flock to this place that's right by the state park. And it's a cool thing to think about. But even just besides that, Camp Shaughnessy, every season they still have camp out there.
That's right.
Yeah. It's I think it was that 1948 you said that
1948 that the land was given to the state park or to the 4-H Association.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I can't remember in correlation. Obviously, for those that don't know, I don't know if you want to explain Shaughnessy, the name.
I'm just thinking about that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, Shaughnessy was the chief of one of the larger groups of Potawatomi in this area at the time, and his village was along west side of the creek, and of course on the north bank of the river, and it was a pretty good sized settlement of Potawatomi people.
And is some of that area where Camp Shaughnessy is today? Was that some of the land that is where they were?
I'm not sure. I would think Camp Shaughnessy might be a little further north of that.
Okay.
Because you had one of the earliest settlements in this area, which was Rockville.
Yes.
And that was a little further south of what's now the state, 102. And and I believe there's various monuments there marking the former locations of Shaughnessy's grave and so forth.
Correct. And what's interesting about Rockville too, it wasn't just the Potawatomi that lived there. The French, the French Canadian fur traders and things like that, ended up settling in there with them as well.
Right, and then a bit later it was mostly a European type settlement. Len Small practiced. Not Len Small. I'm sorry. His father, Dr. Small, Dr. A.L. Small.
Dr. A.L. Small,
practiced medicine at Rockville for a short time before he relocated to Kankakee and built the house that is now the
part of the museum campus.
Residence of the state.
It's okay.
Having trouble with state here.
It's okay. There's just so much state involvement
Memorial Park.
In Kankakee.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. No, it's just I just always thought it was a fascinating area.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there is so much involved there.
Mm-hmm.
The park continued to grow also. I mean, by the time that the Rock Creek section was added, the park size had gone to 370 acres and extended along the north bank of the river from Altorf to Rock Creek, basically. But it didn't stop there.
No, it seemed, you think wow, 300 some acres.
Yeah, that's pretty good size.
That's big, but that actually is not its size today because yet again, they added on to it.
In 1956, there was another big addition. Commonwealth Edison, which of course succeeded Northern Illinois Public Service, donated 1,700 acres to the state, which quadrupled the size of Kankakee River State Park. And that raised the total acreage, or later gifts raised the total acreage to more than 4,000 acres for the state park. And at that time, trying to think of where we got here. Oh, okay, yes. And today, the park basically extends from Altorf in Kankakee County to near Ritchie in Will County.
Correct.
And for most part, along both banks of the river. There are a few spots where it's not state park land. There's still some privately owned land, but for most cases, the contiguous section of state park land runs from Altorf to beyond Ritchie.
Yeah, and it's just mind-blowing that it's grown into that much acreage.
That's right.
And it extends so far. I forget, how many miles that is.
It's a pretty good stretch. 16 or 17 miles, I think, if I remember correctly.
Right. That's just, it's crazy. It's unheard of.
The park draws large numbers. This is at one time there was which fell through a plan to build a lodge there like the one at Starved Rock, which is unfortunate that didn't come through. I think that would have been fantastic.
I often think about that because obviously we do have campgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's actually another thing we'll probably talk about too, a little bit about the campgrounds. But I guess at least we have those, right? We've got the campgrounds.
Yeah, and they reopened the campgrounds, I think, to find that they had been closed for a number of years because of budgetary issues and needs to.
I think they closed them in the 90s or the 2000s when the state was extremely broke.
That's right.
And
then, of course, being closed, they deteriorated the infrastructure. So then they did reopen. They had to go back and invest some serious money to get them back in operation.
Correct.
But,
do you know why, in your research, why was there such a big push to make this state park so ginormous?
Make state park something?
Yeah, make the state park so big. Or was it just happenstance? I mean, I know some of this was obviously like donations and stuff,
right.
But why wasn't like 300 acres enough? And,
I think in many cases, and probably also true of the city park movement in places like Chicago, it was a desire to keep that from being privately developed into residential and industrial land, keeping the more or less virgin property, the trees and prairie lands and so forth, for future generations.
Keeping it a natural
state. It's like
state.
the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, for example.
Oh, sure.
If they had not set aside those lands and acquired them for the huge, they probably would be, townhouses and factories.
Yeah. Well, and you think about, I guess you could get real technical and you could start talking about like just the ecosystem and all of those things.
Oh, yes.
Obviously you want to preserve those things. I mean, animals have to have some place to live.
Right. That's right.
So
the parks really are very popular. They drew large numbers of visitors each year, mostly from Chicago and adjoining suburbs more than anything else.
I remember, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. I may have at some point, but I used to take, for a short time, right when I got out of high school, I was taking some acting classes up in Chicago. And it was, just a small acting school. I can't remember the name of the acting school. But anyway, one of the women in my class, she was from Naperville, maybe. I can't remember. But, I'm used to anytime I go to the city, I tell people where I'm from. They have no idea where that is, even though I'm only in Chicago, an hour away. They're like, I don't know where Kankakee is. I don't know where Manteno is, And so I'm having a conversation with this classmate, and I'm like, yeah, I live by Kankakee. And lo and behold, she knew exactly where that was because her and her family come down to the state park to ride their bikes on the trails.
Uh-huh.
They take their family trips and go down there and spend the day at the state park doing the trails with their bikes. So it's amazing how it's put us on the map.
I was thinking, I think something maybe worth wrapping up on here is from 1968.
Okay.
We're talking about visitors to the state park and so forth. On the 1st of April, 1968, the Journal had a photographs and story on page 1 that the popular TV show Daniel Boone, which starred Fess Parker, was going to be filming at the state park, and they were looking for extras. So, and the picture showed Parker on location near the sign for the state park and so forth, and said, come on out at such hour of the morning and so forth, and we'll do the casting. They drew more than 50 carloads of people wanting to become extras. And of course, noting the date, April Fool time.
April. This has been, I think, the second or third time we've talked about an April Fool's joke from the Journal. When we talked about USS Kankakee, they did an April Fool's joke about the USS Kankakee being docking on the Kankakee River.
And interestingly, this morning I was working on another column for my weekly historical column and dealing with flying saucers of all things, as far as its impact on Kankakee. And
that was an April Fool's joke,
that was
too,
also
right?
an April Fool's joke, yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I think the extras one is funny though. I like that.
Oddly enough, I was reading through the story on the flying saucer that supposedly crashed into the Kankakee Railroad Bridge and fell down behind the dam. I think that I wrote that story.
Really?
In 1967. Because I was looking at it, I was working for the Journal at the time, and I know that I wrote several of the April Fool's stories. And just reading the story, I thought...
You have some recollection.
Pardon?
You have some recollection of writing that one.
This sounds like the way that I would have written the story. So, small world type of thing.
That is small world. Yeah, and you probably obviously don't really have like a way to verify that because they probably didn't put a reporter's name on that article,
they
right?
didn't do bylines at that time, generally speaking.
Right.
Little later they did, for certain things. For several years when I was at the Journal, I was basically kind of a feature writer. I could kind of go around and find whatever stories I wanted to do and write them, and I would frequently get a byline on those. But,
yeah. Gosh, that's funny. Thinking about the state park, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I mean, there's actually something I've always found fascinating just by seeing a bunch of pictures of it posted on Facebook, but I myself have never seen it in person. But there's a truck, like an old truck.
I've seen that picture too, but I'm not quite sure where it is.
I don't know either, and I thought I'm going to ask Jack about that today and see if he knows anything about it.
Rusting away in the woods.
Correct, and I don't know where it is, but it's like the truck appears to be from like what? It looks 1950s to me. I'm not sure, but it's just like, how did it get there? And it's just become a part of the park, and I just find it interesting. They've like never removed it. Right.
Another thing along those lines is the cemetery.
The cemetery, yes, right by the main entrance.
Right, and it was a family farm cemetery, and I've forgotten the name, but we would occasionally get questions at the museum and say, why are there tombstones in the state park? And well, it's because before it was the state park, it was a farm, and a family owned the property. And in those days, especially if you lived in the rural areas, you didn't go into town and have a burial place in the cemetery. You just buried your dead by the church or by your farm.
Correct. And that actually is a very interesting little cemetery. If you take the time to look at the headstones, and some of it is hard to make out, obviously, because these headstones they're very old. But I remember there are definitely some etchings on some of those headstones that indicate that there are infants buried there that did not survive.
That's right.
Were born and
typhoid fever, or there are many things that killed children off.
And there's and it's not the years that indicate it. There's wording. It'll say something. I forget exactly, but I remember one of the last times I checked it out, my son and I were out there and we were looking at the gravestones, and it's just very interesting. But if you're looking for that, if you go into the main entrance of the state park, and then I guess if you're facing the river, it's like to your right, and you'll see there is like a wooden, there's some type of fence.
Yeah, there's a fence around
it.
Just to protect it from being run over with cars or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's kind of up on a hill, if I remember correctly, too.
I haven't been out that way in years, so
I haven't, like I said, I haven't checked out I went out for a walk there not too long ago because just in the last year, I want to say, along the trail that's along the river, it was very overgrown with all kinds of invasive, species. And they went in there and they cut it all out. And before that, if you were walking along the trail in that section of the park near the main entrance, you could not get a good view of the river by any means. Now it is just so gorgeous. You get such a nice view of the river through a good section of walking along the path. Whereas before it was like, I think I can see the river a little bit, but now it's just, it's beautiful. So if someone hasn't.
It's such a tremendous asset. I was just thinking about talking about your son. My kids, when they were small, we would sometimes on a Sunday morning go out to the state park, and one of the areas, maybe west of Altorf, where it was kind of open to the bank and so forth, but flat, and there were some picnic benches and things around there, and we would have breakfast at the state park.
Really,
bring it along with us.
I love that. See, I don't obviously hear people having picnics all the time, but I never heard anyone say like
the kids
breakfast.
Like to go and hike, and it was just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's just such a tremendous asset, and a lot of people like going to the Rock Creek Canyon and just walking along there in the rocks, and you always see photographers taking pictures down there, or seniors taking senior pictures for school. It's just a great asset. So we're very lucky to have that area and that park.
It's amazing too. Sometimes, if you know what Rock Creek looks like, to cross Rock Creek on Route 45 up south of Manteno, and it looks like a drainage ditch.
It really does. Yep. And actually, there's actually a I guess you could say a branch. There's a branch of Rock Creek that runs through my family's farmland. Actually, I always thought it was Rock Creek when I was a kid, but my dad told me in recent years, that it's actually a branch of Rock Creek, and I didn't know there was branches of it, but and he had a name for it. Now I forget the name of it, and I should know that since it goes through my family's property. But anyway, that's getting off topic. But yeah, no, you're right. When you're going through Manteno and you go over that little bridge there, you had no idea.
That's right.
That's actually Rock Creek. So, anything else you want to add about?
I think I'm pretty well wrapped up here.
Okay.
I don't know if I forgot. Oh, well, no, actually, I got a picture. One more picture here.
Oh, okay.
This is what Rock Creek is really neat for is kids playing there, walking across there. Looks like there's a young woman and there, a girl. The way she's dressed, it looks like probably back around, 1900, around 1900 or so, before it was a state park. But there are kids walking across Rock Creek on the stepping stones and so forth.
Yep. Did a lot of that when I was a kid. We'd always play in Rock Creek there at the state park.
One of my favorite photographs is this, and we use it at the museum fairly frequently on various things, is this just gorgeous young lady, again around 1890 or so forth, who is walking across Rock Creek, lifting her skirt a bit, and she's barefoot.
Yes. Going from rock to rock, right?
Going from rock to rock. And that photo was taken by a Kankakee photographer.
Was that Powell?
Powell, yes. It was
Powell. Okay.
We have a couple other pictures showing Powell set up with his camera and another model, not the same person, but making photographs at the state park.
There's a lot of Powell photos at the museum, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have at the museum, I think, something like 15,000 photographs that are identified and in our system.
Right.
And a big portion of those are Powell photographs.
Yeah.
At one point, the Powell studio was in the building on Dearborn, north of where the old Journal or the Journal building, actually where the
attorney's office.
The TV radio station where WKN was there.
Right.
That was, at that point, there was the Powell building, and it was torn down to build that extension. But the Powell building, the museum acquired a large number of glass plate negatives from the Powell building before it was torn down. Unfortunately, a lot of them are just head and shoulders portraits,
yeah,
with no identification, unfortunately. So we have thousands of pictures of people with not knowing who they are.
Oh, man.
But we have a lot of others that are identified, or we can get them identified. But the museum's photo archive is a huge resource.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it keeps growing.
Yes, it does.
All the time. Well, Jack, this has been fun. So,
and as always.
Yes.
And we will see you again in other contexts.
Yes, absolutely. So,
and thank you for inviting me for this. And sorry that Jory couldn't be here to be with us.
I'm sorry too. I wish you could have been here, but that's okay. So if anyone wants to, go for a little adventure at one of the museums, they should do so. Again, the main campus on 8th Avenue in Kankakee, which is the Kankakee County Museum. And then, of course, the French Heritage Museum. The museum always has special events going on. So please look those up and see if any of them interest you. You go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com for all that information. So, yeah.
Oh, and also, I should probably note this little self-interest here. As many people know, my history column.
Yes, thank you.
Used to be in the Journal, and the new ownership decided to drop it. But you can now find it on a blog at the Kankakee County Museum website. And just go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. When you get on the website, scroll down until you find an item that says this is Talking Kankakee County history.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you pointed that out because I was going to mention that earlier and I completely forgot. So yeah, anyone that still wants to follow Jack's weekly writings and misses his articles in the Journal, never fear. We got you covered. You can look at that blog
I post a new one every late Friday afternoon for basically Saturday because used to always run in the weekend paper. So
right. Yep. That's right. So you need to have it done on Friday anyway. So you may as well.
Yeah. Well, and when I was still writing the Journal, the deadline was Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
So now I've got a little bit of grace period before I publish them. So.
Sure. But I'm just so happy that, that continues because especially since and I don't know if this is a temporary thing or a forever thing, but I know I have this same conversation with a lot of people since Shaw bought the Daily Journal, is that, they've changed the journal website now. It's a new website, but all the previous articles that were from the Daily Journal, you can't reach them currently, because if you go to daily-journal.com, it just redirects you to the new website.
Right.
And even if it's a link to even if the article was like a year old, you when you click on the link for that direct article, it still won't take you to that article.
I've been thinking about that and trying to figure out whether I could find somebody to tell me how to do that.
Yes, I don't know. I guess I've just been wondering if they'll find a way to fix that or what. But as someone who does research themselves, I find that a little aggravating when I'm, wanting to look up even something just from, like I said, like a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, because that whole period, once the journal went digital in their production.
Correct.
I'm thinking my wife was still working there as the librarian and at that time, and so everything had they started publishing everything digitally as well as the print edition.
Yeah,
and there's a gap there. We have the microfilm and translation of that up till 20,002 or something like that, I think, but then they no longer microfilm. So if you need the information, you have to get the digital files, and you can't get to them now. So.
Right. Yeah. So I hope that's just one of those things where they're just they're working on a solution and they just haven't done it yet.
We shall see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's one of those things, because those some of those things take a little bit of time. But yeah. Anyway.
Again, thank you for having me in with the usual.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Jack. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.